but I've been reading one of these passages each week, and this one is titled, "The moon by the window is always the same. When we look out the window at the moon, it is always the same moon. But if any thoughts or desires come between us and the moon, what we see changes completely. In original mind, everything is one and the same. Our original nature is deep and clear and bright. One who, when seeing, becomes the seeing, when hearing becomes the hearing, who becomes the very thing itself, is an eternal living Buddha. There is nothing but this in the Buddha Dharma, and there is nothing beyond this. Any analysis we make about it is a mistake, only adding clutter after the fact. When we live with no separation between ourselves and what we are now experiencing, we then know the truly bright and clear mind that is our original nature. But as long as we carry around an ego filter, it's impossible to experience this. To clarify ourselves to this point is the path of the Buddha. We have to let go of everything we get caught on, and we can receive this world with a fresh awareness and a true life energy. The moon is always shining brightly, but we have to see it ourselves directly. When we know it deeply from our true mind, it's not just scenery, but a slice of our own original nature. So, obviously that reading is pointing to present mind, right now. Past mind, ungraspable residue. Future mind, projection, also ungraspable. And if we are able to focus our concentration, our awareness, pick a word, to what we're doing right now in this mind, in this moment, then we can work towards being free of our linear discursive thinking, learn to be free from it by dint of it dropping away, like Dogen Zen Ji said, dropping body and mind, and just being present to the experience of what is happening right now. Now, my teacher, Zen Master Sung San, I remember him once teaching me that you use your whole life, even residue so you leave no residue, even experiences that maybe you repent of, or various experiences that we had that are kind of toxic in a way, but not, nevertheless, if we come from a place of turning that into a teaching modality, then we leave no residue, then it burns cleanly, everything in our life. So don't hold on to anything. Don't hold on to any thinking, any aspect of an I, my, me, and we are free. So there are a lot of teachers who present this, even like I'm doing now, and Zen Master Sung San also used to say, open mouth already a mistake. But many teachers, including the great teacher, ancestor Hakuin, said that Zen enters through the body. It's not yoga, but we become aware of the Anapanasati Sutra, the sutra that is centered around breath. When we're born, we take that first breath. And possibly in hospice, when we're dying, a hospice worker or nurse sits there and matches our breathing as we transition out of this body of flesh and bones and the four elements. And it's okay. It's okay to let go when the time comes, because we can't cling to anything anyway. And if we practice not clinging during our day-to-day experiences, then when that time comes, it's not going to be as much of a problem as we think. We can, because we're letting go all the time, then we just let go. And then death just becomes an experience. But I want to get back to Hakuin and this Anapanasati Sutra for a moment. He taught this breath, and for a while during the mid-centuries, in other words, 12th to 14th, 15th century, the teaching, once again, in Buddhism became more cerebral. They were analyzing the sutras and talking more about that aspect of it. But when Hakuin said Zen enters through the body, and he was referencing this Anapanasati Sutra, and Sung San Sanin taught me, use only experiences. The experience that I've had this yesterday, when a good friend of mine died in hospice, her husband called me and said how interesting that her lungs were functioning correctly, but she was not expelling any CO2. And Hakuin and the Anapanasati Sutra teaches long, slow exhalations. So we regulate our breath so that when we breathe in, very natural, then breathe out. Of course, all of you noticed that the exhalation that I just did was at least twice as long as the inhalation. And that is good practice to get into because of this CO2 being expelled. So yesterday, as I pointed out, this friend of mine died. The lungs were working, but what really killed her in hospice was that the retention of this CO2. And after I leave here today, I'm visiting a friend who's in a long-term health facility. It's not hospice, but his heart function is getting lower and lower, and he has the same symptoms, not keeping somehow this CO2 internally. So when we earlier mentioned about your posture, and even sitting in a chair, about establishing a tripod and leaning forward. The leaning forward is, well, we don't want to rest against the back of the chair, but the leaning forward makes us more aware of this diaphragmatic area, the abdomen. And we can live longer lives. Hakuin didn't know this, by the way. He met this in Kyoto, he was Japanese, up in the mountains early in Kyoto, centuries back. He met this hermit, Hakuyu. And Hakuyu, it was recommended that he see him because Hakuin's health was starting to fail. And he was getting sick. And it was because all of his energy was locked into a cerebral, more or less a tapestry of ideas about what Zen is. And do this and do that and don't do this. And forms are the forms. We practice so that we're not a Zen club and we think in myriad different ways. We focus when we're chanting on chanting, when we're sitting on sitting, bowing on bowing. Everything should become part of practice. And that's what Hakuyu taught Hakuin, that it's not about the breath, essentially, even though it is, I'm telling you, it enters through the body. That's my phrase, right? Enters. But it's not the goal. This prajna, wisdom, and samadhi mind, so this illumination, can only happen after we quiet the mind. Dao talked about it. This wisdom mind can only appear when we quiet everything down. And what Hakuyu taught him, slow inhalation, slow exhalation. Thinking is going to still appear because thinking for our brain is like a gland. The gland secretes, right? That's its function in our body. You don't tell it not to or try to control this biological function. Same with everything, digestion, etc., our heart. But with the breath, we have an opportunity to just become really cognitive of the process of it and not just take it for granted and not breathe upper thoracically, up in the top portion of our lungs, shallow. So we, in our posture, we sit forward. Again, I'll repeat it once more so that we can free up this hara, dantian, tendon, and tonjan, right, in Korean. So it means the same thing in all these three languages, to free up that area so we're actually breathing into our lungs, but it's this point just below the navel. We somehow feel that we're breathing really deeply into there. And that also helps us with this tripod of sitting correctly. So breath and posture are necessary, also then quieting the mind. And if you do all three, if you're missing two, then you focus a little bit more on posture, right? Your mind is settling, you're breathing okay, but you're leaning back, or, like your nose and navel not in a straight line. So all these things take on a new importance, and it helps us to settle all the stresses that we all are subject to in this daily life. Okay, so I want to thank everybody for coming. I don't want to make the Dharma talk too long because then nobody will watch it. Okay, so thank you all for coming. Thank you for